certain characteristics you're looking for, and you don't need to go find the Scandinavian grandmother to prove some kind of point and waste all of our time and resources. There's profiling that makes complete legitimate sense. Not politically correct, but frankly, as Americans, I'm about sick and tired of hearing political correctness.
You know, Horger's trying to outlaw
It's amazing. I mean, I watch what's going on and things you can't talk about. This is just a common sense approach. When I was in the Middle East, because I'm a bigger guy, I know that generally they're going to see me as as possible. I get a little bit of the one, so I got that. I understand that. But again, you don't need the Scandinavian grandmother out there to go through the body cavity search, because we're trying to be stupid here and trying to prove some kind of point to waste time. And one of the things I want to bring up the Constitution, we talked about specific things Congress can do. When it comes to appeals authority for the Supreme Court, all the appeals authority comes by Congress. And I can go through the exact wording. But Congress has the Supreme Court has a certain number of original jurisdiction items. When it comes to the issue of, when it comes to the issue of appeals authority, what the Constitution says is, in all the cases before mentioned, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction, both as to law and fact, with such exceptions under such regulations as Congress shall make. What that means is, not only is every court beneath the Supreme Court, that's also another part I could read to you too, all those are established by Congress, all the appeals authority to the Supreme Court is by Congress. And oh, by the way, what it says about judges is judges, both Supreme and inferior court, shall hold their offices during good behavior. And that's by Congress, okay? And so I was the first candidate to mention this immediately with the Utah case. As I said, we need to immediately impeach that judge who tries to undermine the 10th Amendment within Utah by saying that the law passed by those citizens is unconstitutional. That judge should be impeached immediately. And once you do that, I mean, I'm going to tell you, the fear that's going to be sent out throughout the judges will just cause them to back off false radicalism. But the other thing is that if Congress passes laws that it knows to be constitutional, I'm going to help train my fellow congressmen to say, here's what the Constitution says. You can put a stripper clause to say this law is clearly constitutional. It's not going to be reviewed by the federal courts. Boom, we're saying it up. Whether it be DOMA or whatever it may be, something that we believe that is constitutional. And my concern is that Congress right now keeps throwing the buck, saying, oh, the Supreme Court, they're doing this, all the courts are doing that, and whatever else. Or the military, the Obama administration is doing this. Well, you know what? Get back to this. What you'll find is this document is mostly giving powers to Congress. If we went back to it, we'd figure that out, is that Congress has got more power than we understand.
I know this is more of a state issue, I guess, right now. It's a hot topic, but, we rallied for nullification of Obamacare,
sure. Yes.
And you still have folks who say, oh, you can't nullify it.
Yeah,
okay. You can't do it, but...
Okay, yeah, I mean, the first thing, I was there for the rally, and, I love the Constitution. In fact, when I was in law school, this guy named Professor Quirk, if you ever get a chance to read some of his books, he is to the right of Attila the Hun, by the way, which is great. And we in this class, it was an advanced Constitution class. It was great to talk, because we actually, unlike most law school students, which never read the Federalist Papers, they start at Marbury versus Madison, we actually were forced to read the Federalist Papers, to go through what was intended, all these different things to show us that what we're being taught in Constitution class is all wrong. And I mean, and it's something that what it says is it says that the Supremacy Clause allows in pursuance of, for the Constitution. In other words, that if laws are passed that are not constitutional, clearly not constitutional, they have no bearing. And what it comes down to, again, is the laws that are in pursuance of the Constitution. That's why I support the nullification rally. Now, what I think Senator Davis and some others were arguing is that using the term nullification could be seen as saying we are nullifying it for everybody else. We're not. We are nullifying it for South Carolina. Now, I hope and pray that every other state does the same thing, and the federal government does the same thing. But this is not like the nullification crisis back in 1832. That one, they basically says, look, this is a punishment against South Carolina. We're nullifying it completely. Totally different ballgame from what this is. This is essentially saying that by arguing the Constitution, you said, by the way, when you argued for Obamacare, that this was supposed to be on the Interstate Commerce Clause. The Supreme Court said that was not constitutional. What they said was it could be used as a tax. But they had argued in Congress it wasn't a tax to get it passed. So they lied to Congress so to me, a bunch of reasons, it is not constitutional. I was there at the rally, And I would caveat by saying we're nullifying it for South Carolina, but let's quit mincing words. I mean, we're nullifying it. We're saying it's null and void because clearly it didn't meet the constitutional test.
I'm gonna ask you one more question, and then we're gonna
Sure.
take some here. What's your viewpoints on the Concon?
Yeah, I'll be straight up, and and it's interesting because I answered this question in Aiken, and you're like, wow, I mean, first candidate not to tap dance around the whole thing. Here's the deal, I'm a constitutionalist, and the Constitution gave us a remedy. Now here's the thing, the founders wrote about this in the Federalist Papers, in their writings about why they gave this authority. They believed there might be a time that a Congress was not looking out for the rights of the citizens. They looked for that. And so what they said in Article 5, it gave the opportunity, in this case, when that happens. I'll give you one example. Congress will never pass term limits. I can guarantee you Harry Reid, Lindsey Graham, John McCain with 3.5 decades of Congress will never pass term limits, okay? But yet, the vast majority of Americans want term limits passed because they understand the power of the incumbency and what that does to crush all opposition. So that could only really be amended. If we're talking about amending the Constitution to add that, could only come from the state. So here's the point is it's a constitutional remedy. I mean, there's a bunch of protections in and everything else. I've seen all the things flying back and forth, but particularly for that issue because I'm so big about term limits, that is the only way I see it being done. And so again, I've studied this issue. It's never been done. I will say that much. It's never been done. But it really cannot be compared to the Articles of Federation. What happened? There's a bunch of things I go into why that comparison doesn't work. In this case, there's a ton of things in place, and I believe it's it's a right. Now, of course, obviously, people have decided to do it. There's a bunch of things to go through, but I think some of the rhetoric out there that throws out, oh boy, the whole sky's going to fall and everything. I love this document. I will fight and die for this document. Article 5 is part of this document, so you can't say it's not constitutional to go in and follow Article 5 if you believe in something like, for example, term limits. So that's the answer. I know it's controversial, and I know I'll probably get hit by some folks with the argument again about what happens if it's out of control and so on and so forth. And
So you would be in favor of the Constitutional Convention?
Yeah. First of all, I'll be in Congress, so we're taking an opinion question of where I feel and so on and so forth. In fact, actually, you guys will be doing it without me, so in some ways asking me. But the point I make is that our founders put it in here. They wrote about it. Go back to some of the writings about why Article 5 allowed it. And what they said was the specific instance where you get a Congress that, like, for example, the term limit issue, Congress will never pass term limits. We do have a way to do it, and they give us a way to do it. It's constitutional. So, I would, in this case, again, in Congress, I wouldn't have anything to do about it. You guys, it would be the states anyway.
Before I ask questions, Common Core, I remember down on a video we watched in Charleston with Lindsey Graham. He didn't know what Common Core was.
Sure, yeah. It was pitiful.
Yeah, it was.
He said some of the staffers look over it, and this is in, I think, September. I mean, so way after the...
Yeah, and I've asked enough questions, and I'm sure we got some back here. Sue?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you really think that our military considers Obama their commander-in-chief? Because I think personally it's a joke, and I have never talked to any person in the military that doesn't laugh behind his back and say he is not my commander-in-chief.
Well, well, thanks. I'm still in the military, and this is tough. No, I'm gonna say that this is the tough one because the office of the presidency is something I recall as a young boy. My dad took me, he's a Vietnam veteran, took me out to hails and farewells, formals, and the officers stand up and say, a toast to the President of the United States. And everyone stands up there. I remember Ronald Reagan, for example, when I was a young boy, and just like such pride. Toast to the President of the United States.
We don't have a Reagan here.
Oh, I know. And we have the same idea in our system is that we honor, the President of the United States. It to me is galling to watch what's occurred.
It is.
Because within the military, he is using it as a guinea pig for his social experimentation. I'm going to tell you what he's doing too is, by the way, he's using the military to radicalize America. Here's how. We have military bases on places that don't see marriage as being anything other than what Matthew 19 said, one man, one woman. He is giving these couples, he's going above and beyond DOMA, giving homosexual couples 10 days of free leave, which, by the way, I was in the military, I was, going to range 12. I had to leave my state with my leave, you get 30 days a year, to go get married and come back. these gay couples get 10 days of free leave to come back. Here's something else he's doing, and this galls me. And this is actually, I put also on Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham fought tooth and nail to get a 4-star on the Joint Chiefs of Staff for the National Guard. Now, there's some good things about that, but here's one of the issues right now is that the National Guards in states that don't recognize gay marriage are still under Title 32 underneath the state laws. There is pressure, like you wouldn't believe, on these states to grant the benefits, ID cards, things of that nature, to gay couples. The states don't recognize it, then technically in this, you've got an issue here, and really, the federal government should stay out. And the National Guard should be answering to the governor. In these states, you're seeing states being driven, forced into Obama's radical views of America. And it's an anti-Christian, everything we stand for. And I talk about, again, I went to Aiken, I spoke about this, but the warrior ethos. And someone actually misquoted me as war ethos, and I was going to spread Christianity about swords, some crazy thing. But the warrior ethos is something that, again, people in the military would have never misquoted because they understand it. That ethos is driven home from the first day you're in basic training, officer school. It's about duty, honor, country, courage, something higher before yourself, those kind of things. And you watch someone like Obama come in, who's never served in the military, period. And that's not a requirement, but it's nice in some ways you're your commander-in-chief to have a guy that's actually served. And in this case, he's never served in the military and has radical views on a number of things. And then you watch in the military where he's making decisions within one year or so, ends don't ask, don't tell. Of course, DOMA gets ended, and it has all these radical things with the gay rights movement all imposed. You've got drag queens this past summer that were sent out to perform for airmen on Air Force bases. Now, I'm going to be politically correct. That is just garbage. It's unnatural. It takes away from who we are, and someone needs to speak out and say, that is absolutely wrong. You shouldn't be doing that. And I don't care if someone's feelings are hurt. If you're gay, I'm sorry. But within our military, that kind of behavior is such that destroys the discipline, destroys morale. And I've also spoken out, too, on a tough issue. And believe me, I've been hammered with this, too. My wife spent 8 years in the Army with me. She was an Army doctor. So I believe in women's roles in the military. They shouldn't be in the special operations, in the infantry, in those kind of units. There's a bunch of reasons for that. Everyone in the military behind closed doors says the same things, but you got Obama pushing this stuff left and right. And the Marine Corps dropping standards. Pulled a bunch of different things to fit, again, a radical agenda. Well, he's doing this agenda on the backs of our freedom. Because if we're taking over as a nation and we're gone, all these things that we experimented with, it's too late at that point. And that brings that, last point is, again, the military is one where we can't screw it up. There are things we can make decisions on within our country which we can come back from. If we screw up the military, we as a people are gone. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Who are you going first?
You.
Okay. All right, Colonel, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
To take the battle to the enemy after 9/11. We are a peaceable nation. We love peace. Where is all of the ammunition that was bought up by Homeland Security and in the shelves of every sports shop in this country? And what do you think the intent of that ammunition is?
Sure. Yeah, I honestly, I mean this truthfully, I don't know. And I'm part of the system too, but again, it's still continuing to serve. And I've read the same as you've read. And I'm one who would be asking these questions because they should be asked if you're in Congress. And I go back to the same thing. If you look for the duties, Congress has a duty to provide for the common defense. That is the job of Congress, actually, first. So they should be asking, if you're buying ammunition, that's a congressional duty, what's going on? General, come in here. What are you doing? Where's the ammunition going? All that sort of thing. And that comes again to congressmen standing up for their duties of the military. They're just not doing right now.
Okay. If I could, one more. In the past years that I've been in with the Tea Party, or we have been, we've had delegates or nominees for offices
Sure.
that I have asked, if you were already in the House or already in the Senate, well, I'll ask that now.
Okay.
If you were already there, would you support or initiate impeachment proceedings against this president?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right, because another military
No, in this case.
person said she couldn't because she was in the National Guard.
Well, here's the thing: is that it's if you go down the number of things that have occurred, okay, leading all the way to Benghazi, and I go through the Fast and Furious and all the deception was there, and the preventing of Horger coming in. I go through the IRS scandals, everything else. We know beyond a shadow of a doubt, this president knew those attacks in Benghazi were not spontaneous demonstrations. Now, we can do money-winner quarterbacking about how we should respond militarily, and we got a bunch of question marks about what was said. I know General Ham, by the way, worked with me. I was General's aide at Fort Benning. He was the best colonel there. He is a godly, good man. I know him. And there are some bad things that occurred with him being retired shortly afterward, and what all went on. That's a serious question. But here's the thing. Regardless of all that, we know, because we saw it, that he lied and Rice lied for 2 weeks to win an election. That, to me, is enough in this case where we've got him on record. And by the way, that Rose Garden speech that he used, which I wish Romney just pounded at home, is he mentioned acts of terror at the very end of saying the video and all the things in the video. And the acts of terror were clearly meant to really talk about this issue of demonstrations out of control. That's, sort of terror type stuff. That's all he did. He let Mitt Romney let him get away with stuff. But my thing is, look, the Benghazi thing at this point, what we know right now, is enough to draw up impeachment proceedings. So I also have to work with the other senators to get this kind of thing done. But this president has clearly undermined his office.
Cheryl Valerie's going to talk about that this weekend.
Oh, great.
And by the time he's impeached, if possible, you've destroyed this country already.
He's
No,
trying to destroy the military before the country.
Oh,
That's
well,
what
we
I
don't
was-
have generals, and we don't have
Yeah.
anything.
No, I just got to tell you, I mean, the impeachment process is one that is a process, again, constitutional, and and I wouldn't be saying this lightly, but I've seen enough things occur. And by the way, for impeachment articles, you don't usually use one thing. I mentioned that as kind of a dead set. We've got him having gone forward and used his administration, but with the IRS scandal, with all the evidence that we're going to the top, where he was targeting groups, with everything else that we've gone on, that impeachment in this case is warranted. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Who had the question?
I'm sorry.
What are your economic strategy if you are in the
Sure.
Congress?
Yeah, I mean,
Because that is very important for
oh, sure, yeah, yeah,
Americans.
yeah,
The reports is we are now in 6.7% of unemployed.
right.
I know that is a lie.
Oh, yeah, 'cause you got people that give enough looking
Yeah,
for.
that is
Here's,
a lie. That's very impossible.
sure. I mean, here's the first thing is that, how many of y'all know about the terms Austrian school economics? I mean, and by the way, I was a history major. Okay. But Austrian school economics to me really is classical economics. What you had is that had been our economic ideas. We're going back to Adam Smith in 1776 and all the way up into a guy named Keynes and Keynesianism, which really destroyed us in many ways because Keynesianism went against common sense. I mean, those who run small business understand how business works and what you need to do, what you got to bring in, got to pay your debts off, all that sort of thing. Keynes came in and basically said debts don't matter. Who cares? And what it also did is this whole idea that you can develop what became sort of spending plans, stimulus plans, by taxing people to gills to say build a bridge. And you can see that, oh wow, there's 50 jobs for building a bridge. Well, there's 100 jobs you just lost because you're taxing people. And that's why I bring that up because my philosophy is government does not create jobs. It doesn't, period. The jobs I had when I was active in the military were part of the government, but jobs are only created through the private sector. That's it. So what you need to do is create the environment the private sector can flourish. And we've already seen, by the way, Obama tried the stimulus package, tried the spending gains, everything else. It only made things worse. What I'd like to do is move us eventually to a consumption-based tax, commonly known as the fair tax. And I've been very open on this. And it's a tough thing to do. I will tell you this much. At the federal level we are right now, we may have to go through a period of a flat tax. And I like what Dr. Ben Carson was saying about possibly the idea, we do tithes. We all understand as Christians the idea, and Judeo-Christian people, of tithing, 10% flat across the board to get us to where our nation was, by the way, until we passed the laws 1916 to allow for an income tax and allow for an IRS. I'd like to see us eventually get to the point where we don't need the IRS and get the IRS gone.
Support for that. Hold on,
Was there a
support to the
question back
question.
here?
Young man on the corner,
It's about
been
that.
waiting all
Did you
week.
have a question?
What do you think about the rumor that President Obama is sending out letters to the military brass to whether they would fire on American people?
Yeah, here's one thing I think we got to be careful as conservatives. We have so much on Obama right now that we know that I hear different things about him, about his personal life, all sort of things. On that one, I wouldn't lie to you. I haven't received a letter, and I'm up for, fairly senior rank. I'm a lieutenant colonel now, my board just met, hopefully I'll make colonel, But here's the whole point. The point is that I've heard nothing, seen nothing about it. I will say this much, though. I will say this much, is the president picks the top generals. Okay? Don't think he's not getting what he wants in the top generals. And those people in the military have different opinions on different things. So he picks them. They pick those beneath themselves, which also fill that void. When we look at the Army fighting Desert Storm, that really was Ronald Reagan's Army. That one Desert Storm's overwhelming. He was the top commander-in-chief. He picked the top generals. They picked the generals beneath them. They picked the colonels beneath them. And you eventually get people that think alike. So for example, if the president is all about views on abortion, homosexuality, whatever it may be, don't think that he's not paying attention to hear what he needs to hear from the people he's picking at the top of the pack. I look at guys like General Mattis, Marine Corps General Mad Dog Mattis, and why he right now is not in the military when it's, I'm a Ranger, not a Marine, but you guys are Marines, know that Mattis was a legend in the Marine Corps and went into Alabama Province and cleaned house in Fallujah. I mean, he is a warrior's warrior, Chesty Puller type. He's not in. I can go through a list of people. General Ham, Carter Ham, wonderful man, respect everything else. He's no longer in. So I do worry that's more indirect. And also, this president's smart enough probably not to send a piece of paper, do something that's going to completely get him in trouble. So the bigger thing is he's picking people. If you pick folks that know about the military from the inside, we can stop that. Because I know the things that generally go on within. The problem is, again, when Congress has almost no veterans at all, they assume that all generals are the same and that they don't understand the politics that go on, they don't understand the nuances. But the answer to your question is, no, I haven't seen it, I haven't heard about it. And I've read different things on different blog sites, things of that nature. But I have a hard time believing that they would be that open about asking about firing on citizens. And maybe it's happening, but I personally haven't been. I'll tell you this much right now. I will say this much because I still am in, is that I take the oath to this, not to a person. And so I would not violate my oath, period.
Neela, did you have a question?
Yeah, I want to continue because we are talking about taxes. Everybody is very sensitive about that
Sure.
issue.
Yeah.
You said that you agree in the flat tax, and your assumption is that ends.
Actually, what I said is that I want to go to a fair tax, consumption-based tax. And I say consumption-based because some people use the term value-added tax when I say fair tax. It's not value-added. For true fair tax ends the IRS, and what you do is everyone pays. Now, I don't care who you are, what you make. If you're a wealthier individual, you're going to pay more taxes because you buy more things. If you're a drug user, everybody pays because you got to go in and buy things. So unlike now, where a high percentage of Americans aren't buying.
So how you said like that? How about the corporation tax, the corporation business?
Right.
Is the same thing?
Well,
impose?
Yeah, well, I would actually
taxes.
Yeah, I would actually in this case do my best to end the corporate tax because right now we are losing corporations left and right. Thank you.
Because I'm asking you because
yeah, I was trying to go to individuals.
Multi-billion corporation right
Yes.
here, they outsource.
They're going to Ireland. They're going.
And then Americans losing job.
That's right.
That's why I asked you about taxes.
I'm sorry.
So
Yeah.
what is our tax rate now for the corporation?
38%.
Wow. What is that? So if you're business, you're gonna run away.
That's what they're doing now.
Well, here's something too. Is you got a lot of rhetoric from the left about folks who can work in hedge funds, things of that nature, where they're basically living off capital gains interest, and they really are paying a much lesser rate than say I am, for example. And it's all because of the tax code, because we have all these loopholes, all these issues, and this is one thing with being a lawyer. You get tomatoes thrown at you sometimes when you run across as a lawyer in a Republican primary. But you understand some things. I mean, one of the things you understand is all the money and wasted time on lawyers, on accountants, on all this stuff dealing with the tax code is if we could get back to where our nation was till 1916, which was we were based on a fair tax, which was a consumption-based tax. We could end the IRS. We could do a whole lot of things. And by the way, it forces us to keep our spending down because they cannot win elections if everyone's got to pay. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yes, sir.
You mentioned before, what's good enough for God, 10% should be good enough for us.
Yeah, like I said, in this case, to get to where I want to go, I realize the challenges because when I ran for lieutenant governor, y'all remember I was fair tax right away, and I believe in that. Whatever I can do as lieutenant governor, The state level a bit easier. The national level, I understand the reality to get there, because you've got things like national defense, Social Security that's still there, everything else to pay for. There's a lot more money in this case as part of the whole scheme. That to get there, you may have to go through a period of a flat tax, which is fine for a period. I'd like to get us to a fair tax. And when I did, Dr. Ben Carson, really had some interesting ideas, and one of them was the whole idea of, it's in our culture of a tithe. I mean, you pay 10% to the church, 10% to the government, and everyone pays, and get rid of all the loopholes and everything else, and just, it's a lot more simple.
If you get to go to the Senate up there, who would you see would be some of your best allies, and how would you work across the aisle, or even work within our Republicans there to get them to see the way that
Sure.
we want them to see, as well as on the Democrat side?
Sure. I mean, I look up there, and I really do. I put the folks up that I have a lot of respect for. I don't agree with in every case. I'll give you one example. I would work with Rand Paul. I think, the guy does a great job in a lot of things that we see eye to eye on. However, here's the thing, is that we need to be, as Republicans, conservatives, we have our own minds. And for example, okay, Rand Paul's a great guy. I agree so much. I work with him. But when it came to the decision to end the support for the military in Egypt, at the time we did it, in other words, we should have removed foreign aid when the Muslim Brotherhood was in. We waited until the Egyptian military took over. And this is the one time, by the way, that Lindsey Graham agreed with Ron Paul. The one time Lindsey Graham agreed with Rand Paul, I disagree in this case. Now Rand does agree, but so the point I'm trying to make is, we work together and we'd see eye to eye when it comes to standing up to fighting against Obamacare, when it comes to standing up against things that are not constitutional. I'm right there all the way. Think guys like Mike Lee, ton of respect for. Ted Cruz, I mean, him standing up there against the tide, and I think he made a difference. I mean, I truly do. And I believe, Jim DeMint's philosophy of having 30 stalwarts rather than trying to get 49, 50 weak, wishy-washy people. I see what he's trying to say. What he's trying to say is, if you've got that backbone, look what Ted Cruz. Imagine if you've got 20 Ted Cruzes, 30 Ted Cruzes. I mean,
That would be great.
There's a quote that's, one man of courage makes a majority. I love that quote. Ted Cruz proved that.
All right, one more question.
If things continue to go as they have over the past 5 years, for the next 3, of the fundamentally transforming the United States of America, and if we can still stay together as a whole, how many years will it take to get back to where we were in 2007?
A reason I'm running for this right now, and this, I respect the other guys running, by the way. This is a tough thing. I mean, it comes down, in some ways, it's tougher than going to war because of what you're facing with Lindsey Graham. I say that because right now, at this point in my life, my kids are 13, 15, 17, my business is going fine. At this point in my life, I should really be sitting back and just enjoying life. I'm in this fight right now because I don't think we can turn back again. If we don't change things literally right now and change things quickly, I believe our nation's gone.
Right.
And I believe everything we fought for and the people bled for and died for 235 plus years is gone. And I don't think there's enough time. So, if it goes on for 3 years, 4 years, I'm not sure how much we can do. And it's going to take, the debt, as you guys know, $17 trillion. It's going to be decades, generations to get it back down to where it should have been. I want you to think about something. Let's go back to the year 2000. You're talking about a $4 or $5 trillion debt. 17 trillion now. And by the way, it wasn't just Barack Obama, but George Bush, brought it up to about 9 trillion. So it's.
Back here in the back, the lady had a question.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
What are your thoughts on anything that could be done to alter the control of the Federal Reserve Banks?
Oh shoot.
Shoot 'em.
Yeah. Well, what's first thing is I'd like to educate people about this travesty of Jekyll Island and how it actually came into being. For those that doesn't understand it, is these private bankers that came in. It was all about banking interest, put together in secret, and then brought back as this plan. And oh, by the way, we had fought for our entire nation's history to prevent a national bank. They called it a Federal Reserve to sort of camouflage the fact it was a central bank. And so I say all that because really we should, even though it's technically, people don't realize, technically a private entity, which is crazy, the way we do the whole thing. The fractional reserve system of them printing out money, and then the fractional system of the fact that, it blows things. I'd audit the Fed. I mean, I really, at this point, I've heard arguments from accountants against it, and, who's able to audit, but I would pass the legislation to audit the Fed. And really, this would be way down the road. What we do is, frankly, I wish we'd had the Fed. I mean, it's amazing with money, and people understanding money, is our money's got to be backed, you know? And up really, at least until Nixon's time. Now, it would already, Bretton Woods at least had something where we had some backing in precious metals. Now, it's fiat money, and the problem with fiat money, as we saw in post-World War I Germany, is it can be lost like that. And we're getting taxed every day, by the way, as you guys may know this, we're getting taxed because of the way the fractional reserve system works, and we're all losing value in our money as we sit here. That's all a tax that we don't see, but it comes every day. And so I want to audit the Fed and eventually possibly try to get rid of the Fed.
Jerry, you had a question?
I do. Right now, the Chamber of Commerce is going to be spending $50 million against the Tea Party movement. And several things that are going on that I can't really discuss within our group with the IRS, but some of the things that I'm really concerned about is selective officials, selective senators we had spoke with for months and months and months and committed to come into our convention. But after it was mentioned about the $50 million with the Chamber of Commerce, all of a sudden, Rand Paul, which we've talked to for five different times, backed away. Ted Cruz backed away. Senator Lee backed away. If you're elected to be our senator representing South Carolina, and money's put up against you, and I feel like, and even Stanford backed away, yet these are a lot of folks that we really feel that they're the right choice for us in the conservative movement. But if they decided not to stand with us right now in South Carolina, especially when all of the folks are coming together, and we, by the way, everybody watches South Carolina, how strong the movement is.
I agree.
What would you do different if you got to Washington and you have all of these guys that we all look up to, but yet they bowed away when the money was brought up, $50 million, to target the grassroots, to bring in the more establishment candidates? Why should we trust another candidate?
And on top of that, they wouldn't be where they are without the people.
Without us. That's what's concerning me, is because right now there's a lot of people, and Janet, you know yourself, we have every day. She gets tons of calls, I get calls. People are really getting fed up with it. They're losing patience with our elected officials. They're losing faith in our elected officials. And if the Republicans think they can do it by themselves, last election, I've been in almost every race helping it. Janet's been in races. But what we want to know, what would make you any different than the guys that now I feel like they're backed against a wall and they're not standing with us?
Yeah, I mean, well, the first thing to understand is that, again, the biblical admonition of he who stands, take heed lest he fall, I think is very true. And, you know, what I think we've all learned in life is if you keep putting yourself in a certain area where you're going to get stained, you're eventually going to be in the mud. And when I say that, because D.C. is full of mud. And again, I look back 19th century where the median time of Congress was only 2 years. So what that meant was, in a rise to greatness, from 3 million people up to a world power in World War I, the average person going to the House of Representatives only stayed 1 term. And the reason why is because they were successful business people, and it was like, okay, Joe, it's your turn. Oh, darn, okay. You know, go up there and serve and come back. Now we've got a professional political class. We expect that everyone's spent umpteen years in state legislature, done this, go here, go there, and like Lindsey Graham, state legislature first, then House of Representatives, then Senator. So the guy spent a quarter century already. He wants to spend another couple decades in office where his friends, his acquaintances, I mean, I've heard how much time he spends in D.C., but that's who he is. I want my identity to be here. I want to be a guy who is elected to the Senate, stays 1 or 2 terms, and then never does politics again. Goes back home and just lives with my wife, and at that point my grandkids, I guess, but just go back home and be away from it. Right now the problem is we've got people who, they get the celebrity, they get to D.C., they get invited to MSNBC and meet the press, all that sort of thing. They love being there, they love that, and they realize that they go too far, like with the Tea Party movement. But I'd say as much too, with the Tea Party thing is, I asked them to show this video for a reason. Because you really should watch people's actions, and in this one, you know, people could talk Tea Party. I was there, again, at the inception. And you all know when I ran for lieutenant governor,